Hey there, I'm Steve, and welcome to Jamson Entertainment. And welcome to the conversation. Just before we get started, there are many ways you can help. You can like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. But most importantly, please share this video. Get the word out there so we can talk about all things that we love. Today on Throwback Thursday, in the next few weeks, we're looking at the Mad Max movies. Starting with Mad Max Fury Road, because when I reviewed Furiosa, I mentioned in that one that movie leads directly up to this one. Even though this is kind of breaking my theme streak thing. The theme I was going for, or at least the pattern I had going, I was watching historical fiction in chronological order. But the new pattern I was starting was Mel Gibson. Now, Mel Gibson is not Max in this movie, he's Max in the first three movies. This movie is starring Tom Hardy, Charlize Theron, Nicholas Hoult, Hugh Keays-Byrne, Josh Helman, Nathan Jones, Zoe Kravitz, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, Riley Koff, Abby Lee, Courtney Eaton, John Howard, Richard Carter, Angus Sampson, Jennifer Hagen, Megan Gale, Melissa Jaffer, Melita Jurisic, and Joy Smithers. Let's go over a little more of Mad Max. I found an article that goes over the history and the way you should watch the Mad Max series. Despite the fact the creator, George Miller, saying, there is no way to watch the Mad Max series, it's episodic, which really it doesn't work. The first movie is the fall of humanity. Reading this article, I won't go into all the details because we'll go over them in Mad Max. You find out in the first movie, humanity's already gone through a crisis and civilization is more or less dissolved. And really, with the exception of Furiosa now, the way to watch these movies is 1 through 3, so Mad Max, The Road Warrior, Beyond Thunderdome, followed by Furiosa, and then Fury Road. But it is interesting that George Miller says they're episodic, and I guess with the exception of the first one and the most recent two, I guess you could watch the two after the first one in any order that you want, or you can even watch one Furiosa and then Fury Road, and then the other two in any order that you want. Me personally, with the exception of the order I'm reviewing these, I would do 1 through 3, Furiosa, and then Fury Road. What makes the world building interesting about this universe, the initial fall of civilization was an oil shortage. Now, the first movie came out in the late 70s. I'll have to look it up. I wasn't born then. I know very little about this. But I know there was a gas crisis back in the 70s. And maybe that's why George Miller wrote it about no more oil, or at least being pumped from the earth. In this article, it points out that in the comics and in the opening of this movie, Max gives a monologue, and I'll get to that real quick, that it wasn't an oil shortage, although that is a big part of the problem that humanity faces, but it was nuclear war and nuclear fallout. And as I put in post in the last review, all these movies take place in Australia, mostly because George Miller is Australian, and the first movie was a low-budget movie, and I guess just to keep with the lore, which again in this article says that these are the legends of Mad Max. Now I'll get to the actual movie part. This is what's called a soft reboot, meaning they're continuing the storyline of Mad Max but with a new actor. I don't know why they didn't get Mel Gibson, so you can simply see Fury Road as someone else telling the story, and that's why Max looks different from the first three films to this film. And it's only mentioned at the very end of this movie. It's not giving anything away, but there is one such character called a History Man in Furiosa. So you could see that this story is being told by a History Man. The first three movies are told by one History Man, and this movie's told by a different History Man. At least that's how I'm going to see it. So in Max's monologue, he gives an extreme abridged version of the three films. And one weird thing that reoccurs in this movie is that he's having hallucinations and nightmares about people that were in his life and he lost. They don't go into details how he lost them or who they were, although fans speculate who they were. They even speculate that this isn't the original Max, but we'll get there. I think it's the original Max, just told from a different perspective. That's why it looks different. I see reoccurring, but not constant. These hallucinations and nightmares resurface in the beginning of the movie, and within Max's dialogue, he says he hears him whispering, worming his way through the black matter of his brain or something like that. And he says he tells himself that they can't reach him anymore. Then there's some flashes of them about a half hour into the movie, and they don't really show up again to about the last half hour of the movie. I think the fact that they're a mystery is a good thing, because it wasn't supposed to be Furiosa, a Mad Max saga that came out this year. George Miller had plans on a sequel to Fury Road called The Wasteland. I have no idea what story he wants to tell with the title Wasteland. Probably because Furiosa is a prequel, I was thinking maybe Mad Max Wasteland would be a prequel explaining how Australia went completely desert. But who knows? Maybe it's still going to be coming out sooner or later. Maybe they'll even get Mel Gibson back in it. Maybe not as Max, but as a... Well, that'd be an interesting twist. Like, Mel Gibson's back in Mad Max and he's the villain? That would be amazing. Anyway, speaking of villains, last movie, it was really Dementus that was the villain. This one, it is Immortan Joe, and you learn far more about the Citadel in this one. The best way to describe it, even though I put it succinctly in the last one as him ruling an iron fist, Immortan Joe runs communism at the Citadel. And, come to think of it, at the Bullet Farm and Gastown, because they ultimately serve him. They don't get his resources, which is life, food, and water, if they don't supply him with gas and bullets. And the reason why I say communism is every leader in communism is more or less seen as God. And Immortan Joe is not only seen that way, but he looks more like a monster. I don't know if it's just because I'm a Star Wars fan or maybe George Miller is a Star Wars fan, but he's made up to be like Darth Vader. He has a face mask, he has a breathing apparatus. I can't not see the comparisons. He's still the same despicable, disgusting human he was in the last film, yet it is interesting learning about the Citadel. Max is the audience, and so yes, there is a ton of visual storytelling in this movie, but with Max being the audience, he is asking questions, and so you are going to get some exposition. Not so much where it's a whole monologue and the history of the Citadel and the people and how it came to be. It's none of that. It's just need to know stuff, and that works perfectly. Max gets captured by war boys. They are the foot soldiers of Immortan Joe. And I just remembered one thing, and I'll try to find, or I'll watch it numerous times so I can put it up in post. Immortan Joe is so despicable. He has access to seamlessly endless supply of water. And he releases it to the people below, because he lives up high, in one of these 3 enormous boulders. And he runs it for maybe 10 seconds. This guy is so despicable, he gets over the loudspeaker saying, "Don't get addicted to water, my friends. You will resent its absence." Aside from air and food, is the very essence of life. Now let's talk about Furiosa, who is not played by Anya Taylor-Joy in this one. She is played by Charlize Theron. Maybe I can find it in post and see why Charlize isn't Furiosa in Furiosa. Alright, because I already reviewed that movie, and it's been a couple weeks, hopefully you've seen it already. Tiny spoilers, even though I already mentioned in that review that one, and in this one, it leads directly to this one. I think the very last scene or something like that in Furiosa are the wives of Immortan Joe sneaking out and getting into the war rig so that they and Furiosa can go to the green place. Furiosa is introduced this one when the war rig is being brought down and she's about to drive off to Gastown to make the deliveries there and then supposed to go to Bullet Farm. But she takes a detour so she can take her and company to the green place. There's a few war boys that are followed, but one is a main character named Nux, and he's ill. Part of Max's capture was being diagnosed, like what kind of blood he has and stuff like that. Doctors in this world are called organic mechanics. It goes with the theme of they drive everywhere. That's one of many recurring themes in this series. Max is O negative, universal donor. Nux is getting a blood transfusion from Max, against Max's will, but from Max. And Max has a muzzle on his face, which is a trope that Tom Hardy has fallen into. And one of the weird things about this movie, he's more or less doing his Bane voice, except the high-pitched whiny parts, it's the lower parts. And a lot of his dialogue is ADR. I don't know why. There are very few instances where they actually use the audio that was recorded on set. Back to Nux. He was almost left behind because he's ill, but he comes with the idea because his Lancer, Slit, was going to take his ride. He puts a stop to that by saying, "We'll take my blood back." And from there, I'm just going to say it's 3 huge chases that are evenly spread out. This movie has perfect pacing. You never get bored. As the movie says, high octane all the way through, even in the low points, because there's a tense in there. You don't know when. I've seen this movie a few times. Even I'm like, where's the war party? How close are they? You're worried about the people escaping the Citadel, which is just masterful storytelling that you can feel for these people with there being very little dialogue. It's just them helping each other out, achieving a common goal. I'm going to hold off on a rating for this one and all of them until we get to the end. Those are my thoughts on Mad Max Fury Road. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and live your imagination.